So now you know all about our exciting new initiative, and we look forward to seeing some of the nominations and the entries coming forward over the next few weeks. We're now going to turn our attention to international trade, the opportunities and the risks as well of trading overseas. And we've got a varied panel here to talk through some of the big issues. So I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves.
Thank you very much, Carl. Great to be back with you. I'm Paul Faulkner. I'm Chief of Staff for the Richardson family business, obviously well known around these parts for sort of real estate and property development over the years, but now the business has very much evolved into an international investment business, still operating here in the UK and parts of Europe, but also investing in growing businesses in a number of core markets, including North America, Australasia and Singapore.
Lots to pick up on there in a minute then. So.
Hi, so thanks for being here. I'm heading up the Customs and Excise team within Evelyn Partners. So it's a national team. We assist clients across the country with imports and exports.
Hi, I'm Asker Ali. I'm the head of transfer pricing at Evelyn Partners. What we specialise in is we support international businesses scale up and expand into international markets and do that in a proper way, and also to try and optimise their tax position wherever possible as well as they expand into those markets.
Hi, Ben McFarlane from the Acme Whistle Company, and we have been selling whistles for 153 years internationally, pretty much every country in the world.
Absolutely, the silent dog whistle, is that right? That's yours.
Invented in the 1930s, yes.
It's what, but I guess, is that one of the things people still know you for?
Oh yeah, definitely, along with lots and lots of other things, yeah.
Paul, let me come to you first. I mean, so as you said there in your introduction, the Richardsons will maybe be known as very much a locally based company. But what's the process for going international, you know, and how long has that been on the, as part of the portfolio?
Yeah, it's not happened overnight.
No.
And I think, you know, in a family business, you're constantly evolving and changing. And obviously, while I suppose in the Midlands, the family are very well known for some of the developments in the early 80s and 90s, Merry Hill Shopping Centre, lots of central Birmingham as well. But over the last 10 years now, the business has been developing out a growth capital portfolio, which is investing in growing businesses, great management teams, and been doing that in a number of different territories. So we've had investments in an artisan bakery in Singapore, for example, which we've been in. That's now been sold and we've exited successfully. So it's not new to what the family does, but I think increasingly it takes a bigger sort of percentage of what the group is looking to, or what the group is doing. And as we sort of look ahead, I think that the appeal of diversifying where your capital is deployed, so you don't have all your eggs in one big sort of basket, is very, very attractive. And you know, it's a big world. There's lots of opportunities out there, and from our perspective, we're keen to do more in those different territories.
And Ben, talking about diversifying, do you say over how many countries did you say you've
About 119 at the moment.
What's the differences between, are there particular pockets, are there countries that you think, oh, we're selling to X, that's going to be difficult, or we're selling to Y, and maybe the whole Brexit zone? Have you changed your attitude to all of that?
Historically, Asia was difficult because of counterfeiting, but actually now that's probably our biggest growth market. There's a burgeoning middle class in China that wants the original, the genuine, the authentic, higher ticket items as well, so we've done very well there recently. But you name a country, we're selling into it and doing pretty well, really, across multiple markets: sports, survival, safety, dog training. Yeah. Anything you need to blow a whistle, we're selling into.
Excellent. And Hakan, from your point of view, I guess documentation really then is your thing in terms of paperwork.
Yeah.
Just how big an issue is that? How much does the amount of documentation and paperwork maybe potentially frighten off some businesses from international trading?
It certainly can do, and you mentioned Brexit there, and that really has made a big difference. Unfortunately, negative consequences for UK businesses, because before you had trade between UK and the EU, there was no customs declarations required, no customs duty applicable to goods moving between UK and the EU, and all of a sudden you have that customs border now that didn't exist before. And we spoke about that earlier. It's automatically going to affect, I think, almost all companies, even indirectly. And you might be a UK company who's buying products from a UK supplier, but that supplier might have got the goods from the EU in the first place. So there's a hidden cost that is going to be kind of traveling through the supply chain and hitting the parties involved.
Is that cost as much time as it is money in terms of the...
Yes, and also getting, getting everything organized and arranged. You need to, unless you make the declaration in-house, which is difficult and requires resources, you need to find someone who can make the declaration for you. So if you're a small, medium-sized business and this is all new, then that can certainly be a big problem, taking time and being just complicating.
And ask if I can throw one word at you, maybe to discuss compliance. Would that be?
Yes, I think. I mean, I've been in transfer pricing for what 20 odd years now, and I think compliance was a massive thing back then. It still is. Transfer pricing was always seen as quite a backward-looking function back then. You just had to churn out big documents and support the split of profits across group entities internationally. That's what transfer pricing is all about. I've sensed in my recent discussions with execs and senior management at international businesses, there's a shift towards a more optimizing role for transfer pricing. So whilst compliance is still massive and there's lots of tax controversy out there and tax authorities are trying to get as much tax take as they can from businesses like yourself through transfer pricing challenges and audits, execs now saying, if we move into this new market and this new market and this new market, what's the best and most tax optimized way of doing so? And a key lever for that is transfer pricing. So I think it is still compliance and it's still about risk, but it's also moved towards more optimization as well.
Do you find that you have to explain or introduce the concept of transfer pricing to a lot of potential international traders then, or are they well versed when they come to you?
I do actually, and just before I came on camera, I was explaining to someone what transfer pricing is, but essentially it's strictly speaking, it's around the pricing of your intercompany transactions between group entities around the world. So you've got to make sure that price is right, and if that price is right, then by definition the split of profits across your group is going to be compliant and correct, and that's really crucial. So for example, if you have low tax jurisdictions in your structure and you've got high tax jurisdictions like the US in your structure, you need to make sure that that's compliant, arm's length supportable, and you're not trying to shift profits into low tax jurisdictions. That's essentially what transfer pricing is.
And it used to mean something very different to me, of course.
Well,
that's another episode.
In the football world, yeah, they were higher, weren't they, those transfer prices, I think, a little bit. So, what from your point of view then, from Acme's point of view, what are the biggest headaches when it comes to international trade?
The nuances of the people that you're dealing with sometimes, and having to understand how they want to interact with you can be slightly different to how you would interact with someone, say, in the UK. So how you would deal with someone in America would be totally different to how you deal with someone in Japan. How you converse, how you communicate, paperwork, how they want to see that. That can be a challenge to understand that. Very simply, e-com has become a challenge into European markets. That's probably the biggest challenge that's come from Brexit. But then that becomes an opportunity where you create hubs within locations where those e-com clients are then serviced by a more streamlined distribution network. So there's always challenges, but it's how you then turn that on its head and make it a positive.
Because there was always this stereotypical vision that British people just want everybody to speak English to them when you have a meeting, or you just speak English louder if you want them to understand you.
Very luckily, most people speak English. But when there are the occasions where that isn't the case, there are other things that you can do to be able to communicate.
But making the effort to actually understand somebody's cultures and habits, particularly I know maybe say Japanese businesses or people certainly from that area, that can be make or break a deal sometimes.
It can, because they are very matter of fact. And you don't want to say something that you shouldn't, but also they realise that you're also from a different culture, so we have nuances in our culture that they might not understand.
Hakan, from your point of view, what are some of the most common hurdles that you have to help businesses to get over then when it comes to trading abroad?
I think, roughly speaking, for most clients, it will be about, on one hand, cost, and trying to make sure that you optimize in the sense that making use of free trade agreements or making use of duty reliefs. So try to minimize the cost, really. But the other side of the coin really is about compliance and about doing things correctly. It's similar to transfer pricing. There are rules about how you classify products, how you value products that you move across borders. And I think it's a challenge both to kind of manage the additional cost, because it's a bottom line cost customs duty is not recoverable in the sense that VAT is. So you want to minimize that, and at the same time, of course, you want to make sure that you comply with all the rules. So I think it's a challenge in those two areas. For some companies, one is a more challenge than the other.
When it comes to trading in the EU zone,
Yeah.
have things calmed down a little bit or smoothed out a little bit since those early months after Brexit, or is it just that we've become more used to the new regulations?
It hasn't really been better. If anything, there are actually a number of sort of, what should we call them, easements that's been in place from the UK side that gradually are disappearing. So next year we're going to have some additional checks and controls and document requirements for movement of food products. So I wouldn't say that it's getting easier. I think companies are slowly getting used to this new environment, the new landscape, but it's not really getting easier. It's still tough, I think. I mean, you've experienced that firsthand, right? So
It just becomes the new norm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the more and more you complain about it, nothing's going to happen. You just have to handle that situation in the best way possible. It's interesting you talk about the challenges into EU. We actually find that the sending into mainland Europe really easy. Sending anything into Ireland, horrendous.
Why is that?
Cost is ridiculously high, and also the challenges that the clients in Ireland are less understanding regarding the issues that have been arisen and what they then have to do, which is very difficult to get across at times.
Because these relationships are going to keep evolving, aren't they?
Yeah.
Certainly like the UK with the EU and Brexit and sort of you get used to the new norm, but I'd imagine that trading relationship will change over time, and in some ways, you know, it'll be 10, 15, 20 years down the line before you can really assess, you know, the success or otherwise of that, and you know, and equally at the same time, then I suppose the focus from the UK, you know, into other markets. I mean, we talk about sort of Asia, and I think McKinsey is saying there's going to be 60% of the world's middle class will be in Asia by 2030. You know, kind of just around the corner. There's initiatives like this, the CPTPP, the Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think I may have missed a C or a T or a P there, but
I think you got most of them. Yeah.
you know, could be really useful for helping the UK, which last time I checked wasn't sat anywhere particularly close to the Pacific, but to get a foothold in a market which is going to be really, really important for businesses who trade overseas. So it's fascinating, isn't it? And I guess it will, you know, keep advisors in plenty of work for many years to come as well.
We've also got to zoom out a little bit as well, where, you know, we've been exporting for over 100 years. And there was challenges 100 years ago that are non-existent now. There were challenges 50 years ago that are non-existent. There'll be challenges in 50 years' time that we don't even think about now. We have to manage those challenges in the here and now, but also realise that it isn't the end of the world. If you have a good product and people want the product and you can provide it to them at the right price, they will still take it.
I think that's quite an important point. I mean, we're just at that point. The other point, aside from the customs piece, in terms of the UK leaving the EU, was around previously when we were part of the EU. If you were to move funds around a group via royalties or interest payments or dividends, that they'd be withholding tax-free, subject to certain conditions. So it'd be quite tax efficient. We're now out of the EU. We've lost those EU directives that were there to facilitate frictionless and free trade and all that kind of stuff. So now some of those payments are going to be subject to tax between the UK and the EU. Saying that, we work with lots of groups now, UK-headed businesses who are expanding into Europe. We're helping them set up a holdco in Europe, in the EU, in a suitable location where the treaties work and the tax environment works. So there are workarounds. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but there are workarounds, and you know, people are adapting to it.
But are you also finding that at a time that we're in now where the world is increasingly volatile and people are maybe having to look for opportunities to invest into markets where things are maybe in a better position than other parts of the world, there's more of an incentive to overcome some of these obstacles?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I think there's a wider view now in terms of where should we invest, where can we get better returns. As you said, the world is massively volatile. I think converse to that, as a result of COVID and the Ukraine war and supply chain issues, people are now looking to onshore. They're looking for shorter supply chains. massive disruption to supply chain, which impacts how you split profits along that supply chain. So we're seeing a lot of that as well, where they're trying to bring more stuff in internally. I don't know if you've seen that as well. But.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of reshoring going on. We're lucky enough that we've always been based in the UK, so we're not having to then bring things back. But some of our own supply chain, you can see that they're bringing expertise back into the UK, which is can only be beneficial for us.
What about the Made in Britain brand, the Union flag on everything? Do you think, Paul, that's still as strong overseas as it's ever been?
Yeah, I do. I think brand UK is very, very strong. I think, and we're probably our own harshest critics, aren't we, in this country? Maybe that's the same in others. But when you travel, I've been out on the road quite a lot this year, and you can see that the Union Jack cuts through. People are interested in what goes on here, and some of our the royal family or sort of the cultural elements here. The UK is a big player on the world stage. I mean, I mentioned CPTPP. The fact that the UK was able to get access to that, it was approved by Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, kind of is because we're going to add value. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. And so I think there are opportunities. I know a free trade agreement with the US is very, very complex and probably not on the table for all sorts of reasons. But it's been interesting that the government have been signing these MOUs with individual states within the US. I think there's just been one signed with Florida.
Florida,
and I think they're talking to California. I think California is one of the top sort of dozen economies in the world if it was taken just on its own. And so, there's some nimbleness and flexibility which is quite heartening. And I think the fact that others want to talk to us shows us that they like doing business here. And there's loads of great reasons to interact with the UK. Rule of law that we've got here, the sort of sat right in the centre of GMT and places like, obviously London's a great mega city, but where we're sat today, Birmingham's got an awful lot to offer as well. And so, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves and the value of the UK.
Do you make a big play about Made in Britain?
We have done more and more so. I think what's important is to showcase the benefits of it regarding the manufacturing, the engineering, the innovation that the UK has. Having that front and centre is really, really important, and also to say and prove that everything is made in the UK is really, really important, because price can then be dictated by that. It's not that it's been made off-site and then been brought off and stamped with a UK flag and you're selling it at a high price point. You're actually saying, no, human beings are making this in a location in Birmingham by hand.
And when we travel all over the world, we take Acme whistles and some of their other things that they've produced, and are very proud of saying this is made in the West Midlands. People love them, and it's a great sort of gift, and they love that, as you say, the sense of traditional manufacturing and the fact that it's made here in England.
It's a talking point.
Yeah, and collaboration as well, which is another
really important
debate for another day, isn't it? That really. Final question then, I guess, gents, which I'll ask all of you because you'll all have a different perspective on this one. What kind of specialist advice do you think is needed? Risks that you need to manage, opportunities you need to take if you are dipping your toe into the water with international trade? Is there a checklist that exists for a business where you'd say, start with that and then proceed to this? Go on, Hakan, start us off.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think absolutely, I would say that customers is important, right? but it really is. It's definitely whether you're, as you said, Ben, if you decide that you want to explore the EU market, you want to expand that, how do you go about doing that? There are lots of different aspects. Customs is one of them. But then you also need to think of, well, do I want to set up a business in the EU to be able to supply the EU customers? In that case, do I need advice on employment services? Do I need advice on corporate tax? There's so many things. I'm sure.
Gaining an understanding of transfer pricing would be your starting point.
Well, I think even broader than that, though. Just to give you an idea of what I think is the definition of good. I was speaking to a business this morning, which is a large UK business looking to expand overseas, and they've got it right. They're setting with our help, they're setting up a roadmap to get understanding what the end game is. But along that path, you get your legal entity structure right. You're going in overseas, setting up legal entities or branches. What's that structure? You get your operating model right, how you're going to contract with customers and intercompany as well. You get your governance right, you get your processes and controls right, you automate what you can, and they're doing it step by step. And I would definitely say you get your operating model right first, because it's better to do that now when the numbers are small, because once the numbers get a lot bigger and you've got millions of dollars flowing through your structure, you're a lot more attractive to tax authorities. So get it right at the start, and then as you scale up, it's already there in place.
Yeah, yeah.
And also time, maybe just adding that, if you get advice, then it's going, you'll be able to do what you want to do quicker, and hopefully, as I say, right first time instead of a failed first attempt. So I think this, if you are, it's both about the cost and about saving your time and be able to focus on your business rather than everything that is outside your comfort zone.
Ben, risks to manage, opportunities to take? Where are you?
I'd attack it differently. I'd make sure that there's a desire for the product and that you have partners in place that can deal with that desire.
And I'll give you the last word, Paul, but I guess following on from that, establishing a desire for your products goes back to one of those earlier points we were talking about, which is understanding the marketplace you're trying to target, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, that I was going to add is we find it so important to get out and visit and spend time, and it's around, you obviously need the technical advice, but you've got to understand the country and the culture that you're investing into, and you can't do it. It's very hard to do remotely. You know, I think still being able to put boots on the ground, understand what's going on is important in all sorts of different levels. But massively important for what we're doing.
You can only do so much with a Zoom and a Teams call, can't you? Right?
Looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand is still
Do you find that travelling overseas?
vastly important.
And giving them an Acme whistle.
Make sure more than one.
With a big Made in Britain Union
Exactly.
flag all
Yeah,
over.
Made in Birmingham.
Made in Birmingham would
Made
be
in
even
Birmingham.
better, wouldn't it, gents? Thank you so much for a great debate. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right then, let's go and catch up with Sean.